For 6 years, I slaved for his degree. And at the divorce hearing, I watched my husband sit beside my younger sister like she was the woman who had built his life. Richard wore the suit I paid for. Tiffany wore red. My parents sat behind them, smiling like this was a wedding, not the end of my marriage. Then his lawyer said I had contributed nothing. Nothing. So I reached into my old tote bag, pulled out a yellow envelope, and placed it in front of the judge. Before she opened it, they were still smirking. The judge looked at my family and burst out laughing. I should have known better long before Richard ever put on that white coat. In my family, Love always had a favorite child. Her name was Tiffany. She was 6 years younger than me, blonde, bright, and delicate in the way people praised out loud. My mother called her our little star. My father called her the pretty one. At Sunday dinners, Tiffany got the first slice of pie, the seat by the window. The laugh before she even finished the joke. I got the dishes. Laura, help your mother. Laura, don't make a face. Laura, be useful. That word followed me around the house like the smell of old coffee. Useful. So when I met Richard at a laundromat on a rainy Thursday night, I didn't see danger. I saw someone who finally looked at me like I mattered. He was standing over a washing machine with a white shirt in his hands. A brown coffee stain spread across the front like a wound. I have an interview tomorrow, he said, almost laughing from panic. Medical school. This is my only decent shirt. I showed him baking soda, cold water, patience. 30 minutes later, the stain was nearly gone. He looked at me with those tired brown eyes and said, "You saved my life." No one had ever said that to me before. 6 months later, he got into medical school. The night he opened the acceptance letter, he cried into my shoulder. He told me tuition was impossible, rent was impossible. Everything was impossible unless someone believed in him. So I believed enough for both of us. I took the early shift at the warehouse, 4 in the morning, steel doors rattling open, cold air hitting my face, cardboard dust sticking to my throat. On weekends, I scanned groceries until my feet burned. At night, I cleaned office bathrooms that smelled like bleach and lemon spray. Richard studied. I paid bills, payments, rent, books, exam fees, groceries. I learned which canned soups tasted least like metal. I stopped buying makeup. I stopped getting haircuts. My hands cracked so badly in winter that I wrapped them in paper towels before bed. Meanwhile, Richard's hands stayed soft. Doctor's hands. People said. I used to smile when they said it, because back then, I thought those hands would hold mine when it was finally our turn to be happy. I didn't know they were only learning how to let go. The change did not happen all at once. It came in small, clean cuts. Richard stopped saying we when he talked about the future. It became my residency, my hospital, my career. He started looking at my clothes before he looked at my face. If I came home with my hair damp from sweat, he sighed like my exhaustion was an insult. You should try a little harder. Laura, he said one morning, tying a navy tie in the mirror. People in my world notice things. In his world. As if I had not been paying rent in that world. Then Tiffany started coming around. At first, she said she was just bored. Then she said she was helping Richard relax. Then she was quizzing him, even though she had dropped out of college twice and couldn't pronounce half the bones he was studying. I would come home from cleaning offices and find 2 wine glasses in the sink. Richard would not even look up. Your sister stopped by, like she was a weather report. At Thanksgiving, I saw it clearly for the first time. Richard sat at my parents' table in his scrubs, glowing under their attention. My mother served him the best cut of turkey. My father asked him about surgeries like Richard had already become some kind of family trophy. Tiffany leaned across the table and touched his wrist. You must have such strong hands, she said. Richard smiled, not politely, hungrily. I dropped the serving spoon. Gravy splashed onto the tablecloth. Everyone turned to me. My mother clicked her tongue. Laura, please, don't make a scene. I wasn't making a scene, I was watching one. After that, Richard stopped inviting me to hospital dinners. He said I would be bored. He said I would feel out of place. Then pictures showed up online. Richard in a suit, Tiffany beside him in satin, my parents smiling behind them like proud investors. When I asked why I was not there, my mother said, "Tiffany knows how to talk to people. Sweetheart, she helps him look good." I remember staring at the phone until my vision blurred. Helps him look good. The day of Richard's graduation. I bought a navy dress from a clearance rack. It cost more than I should have spent, but I wanted one day where I looked like his wife instead of his unpaid staff. He rode with my parents and Tiffany. "No room," my father said. At the auditorium, they were in the front row. My mother's purse sat on the empty seat beside her. "That seat is taken," she whispered, by Tiffany's bag. I watched from the balcony as they called his name, Dr. Richard Banks. I clapped until my palms stung. I told myself he would find me after. He would hug me. He would say we made it. Instead, at the reception, a senior doctor looked at Tiffany on Richard's arm and said, "Your wife is lovely." I stepped forward. Richard spoke over me. "Thank you," he said. Tiffany smiled like she had been waiting years to wear my name. Later that night, I followed them to a French restaurant downtown. Rain ran down the windows. I stood outside by the courtyard, hidden behind wet hedges, and watched Richard raise a glass. Then he pulled out a ring. Tiffany covered her mouth. My mother cried happy tears. My father clapped Richard on the back. Richard kissed my younger sister. Not a mistake, not a drunken slip. A full, tender kiss. Then he looked at her and said, "She is my true soulmate." My mother lifted her glass. "Finally," she said. "Step aside." Laura. And that was when I understood. They had not replaced me that night. They had only stopped hiding it, the next morning. I walked into my parents' house without knocking. They were all there. Richard sat on the couch with one ankle crossed over his knee, drinking coffee from my father's favorite mug. Tiffany was curled beside him, wearing the ring on a chain around her neck. My mother arranged flowers on the kitchen counter like she was preparing for a bridal shower. Nobody looked ashamed. Richard stood first. "Laura, let's be adults about this. Adults." That word almost made me laugh. He slid a folder across the coffee table. Divorce papers, a small settlement, the old Toyota, no alimony, no claim on anything connected to his career. "You'll be fine," he said. "You're used to working." Tiffany tilted her head. "You always liked being the martyr anyway." My father's voice came from behind me. "Take the deal. Don't embarrass yourself in court." I looked at my mother. She did not blink. "Richard and Tiffany make sense," she said softly, like she was explaining weather. "You helped him get there. Now let him be happy." I felt something inside me go very still. Not calm. Still. Like a lake right before ice cracks. Richard's smile thinned. "Sign it, Laura. Don't make this ugly." But ugly had already happened. Ugly was my mother saving Tiffany a front row seat while I watched from the balcony. Ugly was my husband letting another woman wear my place in public. Ugly was 6 years of my body breaking down so he could stand taller and call it his achievement. "I need time," I said. Richard's eyes hardened. "You have until Friday, by evening." He had locked me out of the joint account. I had $42, a half tank of gas, and an old tote bag full of crumpled bills I had never thrown away because poverty teaches you to keep paper. Rent receipts, grocery payments, exam fees, bank records I had printed for taxes, little scraps of a life I thought we were building. I slept in my car behind a Walmart. The seat was cold. The parking lot lights buzzed overhead. Every few minutes, a shopping cart rattled across the pavement like a ghost dragging chains. I did not cry. I searched through my glove compartment until I found a bent business card. Catherine Stone, Family Law. She was a customer from the grocery store, a sharp woman with gray hair and eyes that made rude men lower their voices. Months earlier, she had handed me her card and said, "If you ever get tired of being underestimated, call me." So I called. Her office smelled like black coffee and paper. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she opened a legal pad. "We do this clean," Catherine said. "We do this legal, and we do not warn them. For the next 2 days, We built the envelope. Payments, bills, bank records, messages, photos from public events, proof that Tiffany had been presented as Richard's partner while I paid for the life he was using to erase me. Then Catherine found property papers tied to a condo in Riverview, more hidden accounts, medical records that made her face go quiet. "This part," she said, "goes to the proper authorities." I stared at the yellow envelope on her desk. For the first time in years, it did not look like paper. It looked like a door. By the time we walked into court, Richard had already started performing. He sat at the petitioner's table in a dark suit, shoulders back, chin lifted, like the room belonged to him. Tiffany sat behind him in a cream dress, her hair curled over one shoulder. My parents were beside her, smiling softly, like they were waiting for family photos after a wedding. I sat beside Catherine with my old tote bag on the floor. Inside, it was the yellow envelope. Richard's lawyer stood first. He had a voice made for expensive rooms. "Your Honor, Dr. Banks has built a respected medical career. Unfortunately, Mrs. Banks has chosen to remain in low-level work and has contributed very little to the marriage beyond basic household duties." Basic household duties? My hands closed around each other under the table. Richard did not look at me. Tiffany did. She smiled. The judge looked over her glasses. "Mrs. Banks, is that your position as well?" I opened my mouth. But Catherine touched my wrist. Not yet. So I stayed quiet. Richard's lawyer continued. "He said I was emotional. He said I was bitter. He said Richard was being generous by offering me a small settlement in the old car. He said I had no real claim to anything connected to Richard's education or career." Then Richard stood. "I'm grateful for whatever Laura did," he said, his voice smooth. "But she exaggerates. I worked for this. I earned this." Tiffany simply understood the pressure in a way Laura never could. Tiffany lowered her eyes like she was modest. My mother whispered, "Good." The judge heard it. Her eyes shifted. Catherine stood slowly. "Dr. Banks, just so we are clear, are you saying my client did not materially support you through medical school and residency?" Richard gave a soft laugh. "She paid a few household bills. That's what married people do." "And Miss Miller," Catherine said, turning slightly, "was not involved with you romantically before you separated from your wife." Tiffany's smile tightened. "No, Laura imagined things because she was jealous. And Mr. and Mrs. Miller," Catherine said, "you had no knowledge of a romantic relationship between your younger daughter and your son-in-law before the divorce papers." My father folded his arms. "Absolutely not." My mother lifted her chin. "Laura has always been dramatic." Catherine nodded. It was the smallest nod I had ever seen, but it felt like thunder. "Your Honor," she said, "my client would like to submit documentation before the court considers this settlement." Richard's chair scraped. "This is ridiculous. Sit down." "Dr. Banks," the judge said. I reached into my tote bag. For a second, my fingers brushed the frayed seam at the bottom, the same torn corner that used to catch on Richard's lunch containers when I packed food for his study nights. I pulled out the yellow envelope and walked it to the bench. At the divorce hearing, I handed the judge an envelope. The room went quiet enough to hear the air vent humming. The judge opened it. The first pages were payments, bills, bank records, 6 years of rent, groceries, exam fees, insurance, books, uniforms, and household costs. My name beside payment after payment, my overtime deposits, my cleaning checks, my grocery store wages. The judge looked at Richard. Then she looked at his lawyer. Then she looked at my family and burst out laughing. Not because it was funny, because the lie was that ugly. "She paid a few household bills," the judge said, holding up the papers. "Dr. Banks, this looks like your wife was financing the ground under your feet." Richard's face changed color. Tiffany stopped smiling. Catherine stepped forward. "There is more." The next stack showed photos from public hospital events. Richard and Tiffany side by side. Tiffany wearing jewelry purchased during the marriage. Messages between Tiffany and my mother about what to wear to Richard's graduation. One message from my mother read, "Tonight will be the beginning of your real life with him." My throat closed. I had read it before. But hearing Catherine say it in that room made it real in a different way. Then came the restaurant timeline, the receipt, the reservation, a witness statement from an employee who remembered the private celebration because a man had toasted his future bride while his legal wife was not at the table. The judge's smile disappeared. Catherine placed one more page on top, a copied message from my father to Richard. Just keep Laura calm until she signs. Tiffany deserves this. My father stood. That was taken out of context. The judge's voice dropped. Sir, sit down. He sat. For the first time in my life, my father obeyed a woman without arguing. Then Catherine addressed the parts we had not led with property papers tied to the condo in Riverview, hidden money movements, and medical records serious enough that she had already referred them to the proper authorities. Richard exploded. She's trying to destroy me. I looked at him then, really looked. Not at the doctor, not at the man I had loved, not at the dream I had fed with my own body, just at the thief wearing a wedding ring. No, I said. I'm telling the truth where you cannot interrupt me. Tiffany started crying. Laura, please. I almost laughed. Please had always been my word. The judge rejected the settlement on the spot. She ordered a full review of the assets, warned Richard about sworn false statements, and stated that the suspicious evidence would be forwarded through proper legal channels. Richard stared down at the table. My parents would not look at me. I picked up my tote bag. It felt lighter now. For 6 years. They had made me step aside. That day, the whole courtroom watched them move. The fallout did not happen in one dramatic crash. It happened in doors closing. The court froze the disputed assets first. Then came the review, the hearings, the questions Richard could not charm his way out of. The hospital suspended him while investigators looked at the records Catherine had forwarded. His name, the one he had polished so carefully, stopped sounding like success and started sounding like a warning. Tiffany lost the future she had already decorated in her head. No white dress, no lake house, no proud photos with Dr. Banks, just lawyers, bills, and the kind of silence that follows people when the applause is gone. My parents called me once. I did not answer, not because I was cruel, because I was done being reachable to people who only knew how to take. In the final settlement, I got back what the law could return: money, property value, my share of the life I had funded. But no court could give me back the mornings I woke before sunrise, or the nights I cleaned bathrooms while Richard slept beside open textbooks, so I sold the condo in Riverview. I never spent one night there. A year later, I moved to a small coastal town and opened a bakery called The Golden Hour. Every morning, I unlocked the door before sunrise and breathed in butter, cinnamon, coffee, and salt air from the ocean. My hands changed there. They were still scarred, still rough in the knuckles, but now they pressed dough, glazed warm rolls, counted fair paychecks for young women working their way through school. One of them, Maya, once apologized for needing a day off for an exam. I looked at her and said, "Never apologize for building your own life." She smiled like no one had ever told her that before. That was when I understood what I had really taken back. Not money, not revenge, my hands. Love is not a debt. Family is not permission to use someone until there is nothing left. And revenge, the clean kind, does not always look like shouting. Sometimes it looks like a woman saving every bill, every message, every ugly little truth, then placing it in front of a judge with steady hands. I used to think survival meant staying quiet. Now I know it means knowing when to speak where it matters. I am not the woman outside the restaurant window anymore. I do not stand in the rain watching other people live with what they stole from me. Every night, I lock my bakery door with the same hands they once called ruined, and those hands are finally mine. If this story hit close to home, share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for the next story.